Today's video is sponsored by our friends at War Thunder. Built by Mitsubishi at Kobe, Japan, I-169 was laid down on December 22, 1931 and launched on February 15, 1934. She was completed and entered service in the Imperial Japanese Navy on September 28, 1935. Upon commissioning, I-169 was assigned to the Kure Naval District. On October 8, 1935, she joined Submarine Division 12. Her division was assigned to Submarine Squadron 2 in the 2nd Fleet, part of the Combined Fleet, on November 15, 1935. On April 13, 1936, she departed Fukuoka, Japan with I-68 and I-70 for a training cruise off China near Qingdao, returning to Sasebo on April 22, 1936. The three submarines left Mako in the Pescadores Islands on August 4, 1936, for a training cruise in the Amoy area off China, returning to Mako on September 6, 1936. I-169 was decommissioned and placed in the 3rd Reserve in the Kure Naval District on December 15, 1938, then directly attached to the Kure Naval District on May 1, 1939, while out of commission. She was recommissioned around September 1, 1939. Submarine Division 12 was reassigned to Submarine Squadron 3 in the 2nd Fleet on November 15, 1939. I-169 departed Okinawa on March 27, 1940, with I-68, I-70, I-73, I-74, and I-75 for a training cruise in Chinese waters, completing it upon arrival at Takao, Formosa, on April 2, 1940. Submarine Squadron 3 was reassigned to the 6th Fleet on November 15, 1940. On May 12, 1941, I-169 suffered bow damage in a collision with I-70 at Yokosuka, Japan. As the Imperial Japanese Navy prepared for conflict in the Pacific, I-169 was assigned to Operation Z, the planned attack on Pearl Harbor. Submarine Division 12, including I-169 and I-70, was part of Submarine Squadron 3, assigned to the 6th Fleet's Advanced Expeditionary Force, for the attack. On November 11, 1941, I-169 departed Saiki, Japan, with the commander of Submarine Division 12 on board, heading for Kwajalein with I-68, I-70, I-71, I-72, and I-73. On November 23, 1941, I-169 departed Kwajalein to begin her first war patrol. On December 2, 1941, she received the message, "Climb Mount Niitaka 1208, Japanese, Niitakayama Nobore 1208 from the Combined Fleet, indicating that war with the Allies would commence on December 8, 1941, Japan time, December 7, 1941, in Hawaii. On December 7, 1941, I-169 and I-168 took up station off the entrance to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, to rescue crews of midget submarines attempting to penetrate the harbor's defenses during the Japanese attack that brought Japan and the United States into World War II. At 21:01, I-169's commanding officer witnessed what he reported as a massive explosion in Pearl Harbor. There are several explosions, followed by high columns of fire, probably a detonating warship magazine. This must have been some capital ship sunk by our midget submarines. On the evening of December 7, 1941, I-169 fired a torpedo at a destroyer south-southeast of Barbers Point, Oahu. The destroyer, apparently sighting the torpedo's wake, turned away, avoiding it, and counterattacked with depth charges. I-169 and I-168 spent December 8, 1941, off the entrance of Pearl Harbor awaiting the return of midget submarine crews, but none returned. On December 9, 1941, I-169 attacked a cargo ship south of Oahu without success and was depth-charged again. Later that day, she became entangled in an anti-submarine net off Barbers Point. After several hours, she freed herself, damaging a periscope in the process, and finally surfaced after remaining submerged for about 39 hours. When all hope of rescuing air crews shot down during the December 7th attack was abandoned, she left Hawaiian waters, arriving at Kwajalein on December 27, 1941. On January 12, 1942, I-169 departed Kwajalein for her second war patrol, tasked with patrolling the waters around Midway Atoll in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands and conducting reconnaissance of the atoll. She arrived off Midway on January 21, 1942. At around 18:05 on February 8, 1942, she surfaced less than 1,000 yards from Midway's Brooks Channel to bombard the radio station on Sand Island. However, after firing only 3 rounds from her 100mm gun, return fire from a United States Marine Corps 5-inch coastal artillery battery forced her to submerge. On February 10, 1942, she surfaced south of the mouth of Brooks Channel at around 17:58 for a second attempt at bombarding Sand Island, but 2 U.S. Marine Corps Brewster F-2A3 Buffalo fighters from Marine Fighter Squadron 221, VMF 221, spotted and attacked her, each dropping bombs that landed close alongside I-169. The fighters then briefly strafed I-169 before she submerged, having fired only 2 100mm rounds at the island. She returned to Kwajalein on February 17, 1942. War Thunder is the most extensive vehicle combat game ever created, and it's available for free on PC and consoles. Take control of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from 10 major nations, spanning from 1920s biplanes and armored cars to today's modern fighter jets and main battle tanks. My favorite part is that you can join a global community of over 70 million players in epic player versus player battles, exploring meticulously detailed vehicles and realistic combat scenarios that are perfect for military history enthusiasts, offering a diverse range of historical content and thrilling gameplay experiences. And the best part is, you can play War Thunder now for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox by using my link in the pinned comment or video description. New and returning players who haven't played in 6 months will receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms. This pack includes multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account time. Additionally, you'll get a 50% experience and income booster, and 2 advanced vehicles for rent, among other goodies to give you a head start in the game. This offer is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Claim it now while you can. On February 18, 1942, I-169 departed Kwajalein to begin her 3rd war patrol, tasked with defending Rabaul on New Britain from an approaching U.S. Navy Task Force 11, which aimed to launch air raids against Japanese forces and bases. However, after Task Force 11 lost the element of surprise and withdrew, I-169 was redirected to patrol east of Wake Island. After an uneventful patrol, she proceeded to Japan, arriving on March 5, 1942, for an overhaul at Kure. With the overhaul complete, I-169 departed Kure on April 15, 1942, to begin her 4th war patrol, operating as part of a submarine patrol line near Wake Island. This patrol also proved uneventful, and she returned to Kwajalein on May 9, 1942. During her stay at Kwajalein, she was renumbered I-169 on May 20, 1942. On May 24, 1942, I-169 departed Kwajalein for her 5th war patrol, supporting Operation MI, the planned Japanese invasion of Midway Atoll. As part of Submarine Squadron 3, she operated in a patrol line with submarines I-168, I-171, I-174, and I-175 in the Pacific Ocean. Their mission was to intercept American reinforcements approaching Midway from the main Hawaiian Islands to the southeast. During the Battle of Midway, fought from June 4 to 7, 1942, I-169 squadron mate I-168 torpedoed the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, but the rest of the patrol line had no impact on the battle, and I-169 saw no action during her patrol. The Japanese suffered a decisive defeat and canceled the invasion of Midway. I-169 concluded her patrol with her arrival at Kwajalein on June 20, 1942. On July 9, 1942, I-169 departed Kwajalein for her 6th War Patrol with the commander of Submarine Division 12 on board. Her orders were to reconnoiter New Caledonia and the New Hebrides. In July, she conducted a reconnaissance of New Caledonia's St. Vincent Bay. On July 25, 1942, while 75 nautical miles southeast of Noumea, New Caledonia, she torpedoed the Dutch 9,227 gross register ton cargo ship Jinagara, which was serving as a United States Army troopship on a voyage from Rockhampton, Queensland, Australia to Noumea. After several torpedo hits, Jinagara sank. On August 4th and 5th, 1942, I-169 conducted a reconnaissance of Port Vila on Efei in the New Hebrides, but had to leave the area when 2 destroyers chased her. I-169 departed from Truk on August 17, 1942, heading back to Japan. She arrived at Kure on August 24, 1942, and then moved to Sasebo on September 2, 1942 for an overhaul. Once the overhaul was complete, she returned to Truk, arriving on September 18, 1942, along with Submarine Squadron 3's I-8, I-168, I-171, I-172, I-174, and I-175 to participate in the Guadalcanal campaign. On November 16, 1942, the 6th Fleet Commander, Vice Admiral Teruhisa Komatsu, called a meeting of submarine captains and announced that the Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, had ordered the Japanese submarine force to organize a supply system for the Imperial Japanese Army's 17th Army on Guadalcanal. After participating in this effort, I-169 returned to Kure on January 3, 1943. I-169 spent the first half of 1943 involved in the Aleutian Islands campaign, which had begun in mid-1942. On January 15, 1943, she left Kure to carry supplies to the Japanese garrison on Kiska in the Aleutian Islands. After returning to Kure, she was assigned to the 5th Fleet for the duration of the Aleutians campaign. On February 15, 1943, she departed Kure for another trip to Kiska, this time carrying Japanese soldiers, a Type A midget submarine, and its torpedoes. She reached Kiska on February 26, 1943, discharged her passengers and cargo, and began her return voyage to Kure on February 27, 1943. During the trip, she sighted a U.S. Navy cruiser escorted by a destroyer on February 28, 1943, and the destroyer mounted a depth charge attack against her. After refueling from the oiler Teiyo Maru on March 20th and 21st, 1943, I-169 departed Paramushiro in the Kuril Islands on March 22, 1943, to patrol the Bering Sea as part of a submarine patrol line. After an uneventful patrol, she returned to Japan, arriving at Yokosuka for an overhaul on April 9, 1943. During April 1943, she became part of Submarine Squadron 1, along with submarines I-2, I-7, I-31, I-34, I-35, I-168, and I-171 in the 5th Fleet's Northern District Force, tasked with reinforcing and resupplying Japanese garrisons in the Aleutian Islands. The Battle of Attu began on May 11, 1943, with U.S. landings on Attu Island. On May 21, 1943, with the situation on Attu deteriorating, the Japanese Imperial General Headquarters decided to evacuate the isolated garrison on Kiska. On May 24, 1943, I-169 departed Yokosuka for Kiska, carrying 1,440 rifles with ammunition and 2 tons of food. En route, she was ordered to join I-171 and I-175 in forming a scouting line near Attu. On May 30, 1943, combat operations on Attu ended with the annihilation of the Japanese garrison. I-169 conducted a reconnaissance of Kuluk Bay on the northeastern coast of Adak Island on June 5, 1943, and arrived at Kiska on June 9, 1943, where she discharged her cargo. She embarked 60 passengers and departed Kiska on June 10, 1943. She survived an attack by a radar-equipped destroyer while on the surface charging her batteries and arrived safely at Paramushiro on June 14, 1943. On June 14-15, she took aboard cargo from the auxiliary submarine tender Heian Maru and refueled from Teiyo Maru. In late June 1943, I-169 departed Paramushiro for another supply run to Kiska, refueling from Teiyo Maru on June 27, 1943. She and the submarine I-21 received orders on July 17, 1943, to shell Mchika Army Airfield at Constantine Harbor on Mchika, but the order was cancelled 9 hours later. On July 22, 1943, she made a sound contact on Rear Admiral Robert C. Giffin's Task Group 16.21. She transmitted a contact report which the submarine I-2 received, but dense fog prevented I-169 from attacking Giffin's ships. On July 28, 1943, the last Japanese troops were evacuated from Kiska. Allied forces did not detect the evacuation and launched a full-scale invasion of unoccupied Kiska in Operation Cottage on August 15, 1943. But Japanese involvement in the Aleutians campaign had ended with the July 28 evacuation. On August 10, 1943, I-169 arrived at Kure for an overhaul. With her overhaul complete, I-169 departed Kure on September 25, 1943, bound for Truk, arriving on October 3, 1943. She left Truk on October 14, 1943, and while at sea, she was ordered to join submarines I-19, I-35, and I-175 in attacking a large westbound Allied convoy sighted by I-36 south of the Hawaiian Islands. On November 19, 1943, I-169 was on patrol in the Pacific Ocean between Hawaii and the Marshall Islands when she, along with I-19, I-35, I-39, and I-175, received orders to proceed to Tarawa Atoll in the Gilbert Islands, where an invasion fleet of about 200 Allied ships was gathering. On November 20, 1943, U.S. forces landed on Tarawa Atoll and Makin Atoll in the Gilberts. The Battle of Tarawa saw the Japanese garrison destroyed by November 23, while the Battle of Makin ended with the annihilation of Japanese forces on November 24. On November 26, 1943, I-169 was ordered to form a picket line with submarines I-19, I-40, and R-038 north of Makin Atoll. While running on the surface on December 1, 1943, an American plane detected her, but she managed to dive and escape. Running submerged, she made sound contact on a heavily escorted U.S. convoy, but could not break through the escort screen to attack. She returned to Truk on December 9, 1943. During December 1943 and January 1944, I-169 took torpedoes and stores aboard from Heian Maru at Truk. On January 1, 1944, she was assigned to Truk-based Submarine Division 12, part of Submarine Squadron 3, along with submarines I-171, I-174, I-175, and I-176. She departed Truk for Rabaul on January 27, 1944, then set off from Rabaul on a supply mission to Buka and Buin the same day. She returned to Truk on March 11, 1944. She left Truk again on March 18 but returned on March 22, 1944. On April 4, 1944, I-169 was anchored in Truk Lagoon northwest of Dublin, taking on supplies with some workmen aboard while her commanding officer and 20 other crew members were ashore. At around 0900 Japan Standard Time, an air raid warning was issued. I-169's watch officer ordered an immediate dive to avoid an attack by approaching U.S. Navy PB-4Y-1 Liberator patrol bombers. She submerged with most of her deck hatches still open and her main induction valve unsecured, causing her aft compartments to flood instantly. An attempt to resurface failed, and although surviving crew members sealed off the flooded compartments, I-169 sank to the bottom in 125 feet or 38 meters of water. Initially, it was not clear that I-169 was in distress. Concern grew only after she did not resurface post-air raid and attempts to contact her failed. a diver sent to investigate found her on the bottom and communicated with surviving crew members trapped on board by tapping on her hull. On April 5, 1944, 6th Fleet Headquarters issued rescue orders for the trapped survivors. A repair ship with a 30-ton crane and the tug Futagami arrived to lift I-169's bow to the surface. They initially had trouble locating I-169, and when they did, the crane's cable broke under the flooded submarine's great weight. Tapping from inside the submarine faded except from the aft compartment. Salvage crews lowered air hoses and drilled holes in I-169's ballast tanks, but could not signal the surviving crew to open the air valves from inside. The trapped crewmen fell silent by 2300 on April 5, 1944, and air raids on Truk halted further work overnight on April 5 to 6, 1944. All the trapped men who survived the initial flooding eventually suffocated. At 22:32 on April 17, 1944, U.S. Navy codebreakers intercepted and decrypted a Japanese message providing a preliminary report on the loss of I-169. The decrypted message read, "Interim report about the I-169 incident. The bodies of the Army officers have been recovered and the causes of the accident have been investigated. It is regrettably the case that, as far as can be seen, the hatchway and outboard were closed, but the cover of the engine room was left open. Compressed air was driven thence through the storm ventilator. Through some mistake or other, the flood controller there was left open. For that reason, the engine room and after torpedo compartment hatchway was open." In the weeks following I-169's loss, divers recovered 32 bodies from her forward compartments. The Japanese began referring to I-169 as Shinohara, after her commanding officer, Lieutenant Shigeo Shinohara, who was ashore and survived the sinking. In May 1944, anticipating an imminent invasion of Truk, the Japanese detonated depth charges around I-169 to prevent her from falling into enemy hands, heavily damaging her bow and conning tower. However, the Allies chose to bypass Truk, which remained under Japanese control until the end of the Second World War. I-169 was stricken from the Navy list on June 10, 1944. The wreck of I-169 was rediscovered in February 1972 when 6 divers entered and filmed its interior. In August 1973, the remains of her crew and their personal effects were returned to Japan, where the crew's remains were cremated according to Shinto customs. I-169's ship's bell is on display at the Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo, Japan. Thank you again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to play it for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox now by using my link in the pinned comment or video description. New and returning players who haven't played in 6 months will receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms, including multiple premium vehicles, in-game currency, 100,000 Silver Lions, 7 days of premium account, and other goodies, available for a limited time only, so make sure not to miss it. Blow up some tanks and have a blast.